Welcome back to my Journeys with God. The journey that I want to talk to you about today is navigating His silence. So there's times when you'll be praying for something, you'll be believing something, and you will not hear about it from God. And there could be a couple of things going on. And in my experience, sometimes it's just that I'm really not listening. I have too many other things that are overwhelming me and overcrowding my mind and my thoughts and overcrowding and honestly taking the place of my focus, where I'm not really focusing on trying to hear Him. I'm really focusing on the obstacles and the situations that are before me, and I may even have people that I'm allowing to speak to me more than I'm allowing myself to really sit and hear the voice of God. Another thing that I've learned is, especially if I'm in a wilderness season, God's voice is so still and small that it's extremely difficult to have that voice compete with other things going on, including my own thoughts. So, in those times, the best thing that I can do is to also become still and silent and allowing myself to trust that He is the shepherd and I am His sheep. So, I hear His voice the way that His word tells me that I do. So, then I also don't question, okay, if I'm hearing something that's very small and still, or I just have this really, really small feeling, that is Him and it's not something else, and dismiss it. Because when His voice is so still and small like that, it's also very easy to dismiss that you're really hearing or feeling the urge from the Holy Spirit. Another thing that may be going on is just that you're not hearing. He's not saying anything about that. There was a time recently where I was fasting and praying on a situation, and there was a timetable for it. So I'm fasting and I'm praying for about a week, I think it was, and I wasn't hearing anything. But it's not that God wasn't speaking, because He was definitely speaking to me about a number of other things that I had not asked Him anything about. What it was that He was speaking on other things that, in hindsight, I think I did need to hear more about at that time. And the fact that I was fasting, I was actually receiving things that I was not expecting to, which, again, I needed. However, the thing that I was really fasting and praying about, I wasn't hearing not one word. And what I had to accept out of that situation is, for one, I had to trust Him regardless. I had to trust that if God wanted me to hear about this specific situation, the fact that I'm fasting, the fact that I'm praying, the fact that I'm taking time out to hear from Him and to listen to Him, the fact that I am desiring wholeheartedly to get His answer on this matter and I'm not hearing anything, but I trust that if there was anything for me to do, I would have heard, He would have made it plain to me. So the fact that He didn't, I did not, and He knows my heart. He knows I did not want to walk out of disobedience at that time. And so that's what I had to trust. There's also times when the fact that He's not saying anything is our sign. Sometimes that is what He's saying. Sometimes He's already given us the no, and we're still asking for a yes when He's clearly given us the no. And so sometimes we're asking, but it's almost like when you're begging a parent, like, please, 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 please. And they've said no 1,000 times. And we're just waiting for that answer to change. God does not change. Okay? He said what He said. His word will not come back to Him void. His promises are His promises. If He's told you no and He's shown you no plenty of times, that is not going to change. I feel like when it comes to me, because the Holy Spirit whole checks me. That's how we relate. I believe that there's times God is looking at me like, I didn't gave you the answer. I know you've heard the answer. You know where I stand on this. I'm not even responding to this anymore. Okay, you know. I said what I said, and sometimes I just have to get out of my own way to accept that He said what He said. Then there's also the times where God is, and I learned this more recently. I went to the Whole Her conference, which was an amazing conference and time of fellowship, and there was this profound message about what happens when God's no or God's not yet becomes no. And what I learned through that message was sometimes God is preparing us for the no. Sometimes the answer is no, but we receive it as a not yet because we haven't heard about it. But that's because God knows we actually need more to be able to receive the no. And we actually need to be in a different position where we're more understanding of the no and accepting of it instead of us getting the no and rebelling. So it was interesting because the way God works, He gives us what we need when we need it. So for me, I went to that conference. I was in a season of change. There was some drastic changes in my life literally just before that conference, the week before. Attend this conference, hearing these words, God had set me up to be in this room because there were certain messages that God was telling me I needed to hear before I even went. But I was like, I really don't want that, Lord. But you know what? I absolutely needed it. And so thank God that I had also gone through a journey with Him where I let Him help me to understand and see myself and see the things that were going on in myself to need some of those messages that I honestly didn't want. So go to the conference, get that message. Not long after that, and this was also a time I had been fasting, and I was fasting with a group, the Mornings with God ministry, which is an amazing ministry. And if you have not fasted before, or if you want to take your fasting to another level, definitely look for Minister Tiffany Soa and the Mornings with God ministry, because when I tell you that fast was something else. Okay. And I've done fast longer than that, but that was by far the hardest fast I've ever done. And I've done dry fast also. But this fast challenged me in a different way. But me being challenged in a different way meant me sacrificing in a different way, which meant me hearing from God and experiencing God in ways that I needed to. So during that time of fasting, after receiving this word, I got a big no that I had been praying for years in my life. I had been praying for years on something. And to be honest, looking back, I probably had several no's. So it was a situation where God allowed me to go into it. I stepped away from it. And during that time of stepping away, there was a lot of things that happened, which made me realize where I was literally in my life, physically, who I was around. That's where I needed to be at that time. After that, I was not trying, I was fasting and praying on an answer about returning, and I wasn't hearing anything. Crickets, 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 crickets. Funny thing is, looking back on it, there were times where I kept pursuing it that I then saw maybe that was not actually the best use of my time and energy. So those were probably hints to the no that honestly I wasn't ready to accept. And maybe those were even tests to see if I was ready to accept the no, because I wasn't. To the point where there were other people that I know have a relationship with God that I was reaching out to because I wasn't getting an answer, looking for them to give me an answer. And I had believed that what I heard was not yet. And so I'm waiting for the release. I'm waiting for the yes. I'm waiting for the confirmation. So I'm asking other people throughout time, other people that have relationships with God, about what they hear about it for me. And I had someone who I had never met before, never spoke to before. Actually, I only spoke to them that one time. And they told me, I think God is saying no, but if God tells you no, you're not ready to accept it. And I felt offended. I was like, this person don't know me. What you mean? I know how to say yeah. I know how to accept whatever God says. They were right. They were absolutely right. It was not time. And I should have been doing something else, versus honestly, I was in a situation where I was sacrificing things of myself for something that God had not said yes to. Moving forward, again, reached out to someone who has a relationship with God. And I told them what I was looking for, what I was praying for, and they're like, I don't know if that's what He wants to do. Again, they were right. I was wrong. At least at that time. So, to be honest, I don't know what's going to happen with it moving forward. That's a story that's in development, which is why I'm not giving more details. And when I know more, and if God leads me to do so, I will share the whole story with you all. But more recently, during this recent time of fasting, I believe it may have even been during Holy Week this year, I got a no. And it wasn't a no where I heard God say no, but there's some other steps in the process, and I received a no. And that was when I went back to that sermon and I remembered what happens when God's not yet becomes no. And that's where I was. I was like, okay, God, this door is closed. Um, that means this way that I thought this was going to be able to be navigated in my life, that's no longer an option. So now, God, what does that mean? But because I've gone through these experiences, because I've gone through the journey, because He set me up to be in this place now, I wasn't upset. It didn't. It got nowhere near breaking me or breaking me down. And I just said, okay, God, I don't know what this means. But when you're ready to tell me what it means and I'm ready for it, then I'll know. So in the meantime, I'm asking Him other questions. Okay, God, well, I'm also interested in this and that. Are these alternative options? Are these more of the direction you want me to go? And if He ever releases me to, then I will. But I'm not going to harp on the not yet that has become a no, because God can break protocol, God can give favor, God has other paths and other routes. And truth be told, the more that I think about it, it's honestly also something that I had came to the conclusion that's not fully what I want. And to be honest, what I want really doesn't exist. So maybe God is preparing me to create it. Maybe God allowed me to get certain experiences so now I can actually create the thing that I really wanted. Maybe He's preparing me to pioneer something. Maybe He's preparing me to use me in another way that has a greater impact. God can use everything, and He can work all things out for our good. So when you think you're not hearing Him, trust Him still. Ask and figure out what season you are in your life. If it's the wilderness, very much so make sure that you're paying attention to the small, still voice. The beauty of the wilderness is there's protection in the wilderness, and victories are won in the wilderness, but they're done God's way and on God's timing and along God's path. So if you are in the wilderness and you're not hearing Him, your number one responsibility is to seek the small, still voice. If you're not in the wilderness season and you're praying and you're hearing Him, it's just not about the thing you're praying for, just keep praying for it. And thank Him for what He is talking to you about. If you've heard a not yet, you haven't heard a no, you're still in waiting, really take inventory of what has He shown you so far. What has He told you so far? What does it really mean? And are you pursuing something that's really aligned with what He's called you to do and who you are and who He created you to be? Or are you pursuing something for the wrong reasons too? Maybe He's preparing you for your no, but not that He won't use every bit of what you've gone through. So pray that this blesses you. Thank you for listening again. And until next time, when I'll be sharing another journey with God. Peace.